Welcome to The Funnel. My name is John Shea, and I'm president of Alignment Group. This is episode number 266 of The Funnel, Sales, Leads, and the Marketing Disconnect. Before we begin, I want to apologize because last week we didn't publish a podcast. Now we're starting to skip like major holidays in some cases. If we're scheduled to do one on a Monday and it's Labor Day here in the U.S., we don't publish. I think we did that in September. But this one was really kind of my mistake. I fell sick and I was unable to record the podcast. Generally, I record, 2 or 3 ahead of time, so I have them in case something comes up. And I was due to record a number of them, and I fell ill. So I was kind of down for the count for about 7 days straight. I'm feeling much better now, and I apologize if you were expecting a podcast in your inbox or iTunes or Stitcher or however else you get them. We'll try to avoid that in the future. I also want to tell you about some changes that we're going to officially launch in the next couple of weeks. We're going to change over the website a little bit, add some things and take some things away. We're going to build some new content, but more importantly, we're going to take my knowledge and the things that I've done over the years of my consulting with clients, from the sales training to hiring, onboarding, management, consulting, those types of things where I help sales managers and convert them into online classes that we can bring to you at an affordable price. The first one we're going to deliver is a sales class. So why sales? You speak a lot about management classes. Well, for one, I'd written a sales class about in less than a year ago and put a lot of time and effort into it for another venture that didn't really kind of come to fruition. And I really liked the content. So I went back and I over this summer, and I made some adjustments to it. I added some things. I took some things away that I thought might be a little bit too much. And I developed some content around it, some downloadable things that you can take and use, your reps can use with them. And I really address selling in today's world, what it's like to sell in what I call the inbound world, right? Where everybody's talking about marketing and social selling and inbound leads, and sales reps are like, how do I develop prospects when I can't pick up the phone and call people out of the blue or knock on the door? How do I make them come to me, right? How do I create that opportunity for myself? And I think there's a lot of noise out there about social selling. I take that down and I break it down into really actionable items for salespeople. So it's like 9 modules, and it takes them step by step through every bit of the process for not only prospecting and developing leads, but how to handle inbound leads when they come from your marketing department. How do you take a lead that comes to you as a sales rep and bring it to its close? And that's sell something. And I think this podcast is a perfect sort of segue into that. So for me to kind of briefly talk about what's coming and then eventually launch it in a couple weeks, I thought this podcast would maybe could hit home with you on what I'm talking about. With selling leads, because there is this disconnect between sales and marketing leads, or the leads from marketing to sales. And you've heard me talk about it in previous podcasts, but this struck a nerve with me because I was reading an article and I read somewhere that the vast majority of marketing qualified leads don't close, right? So I'm saying, why is that? It's like 98%, something like that. Why is that happening? How the heck do we get to a place where we're providing leads that don't close? So it reminds me of Glenn Ross. I want the good leads. I want the Glenn Gary leads. They've got these leads, and they're calling these people and sitting at their kitchen table trying to sell them vacation, I think, spots, and they just can't close the business, and they have these leads and they stink, right? So they want the good leads. And I think that's what we're facing in sales at a much higher level than what we're talking about in Glenn Ross, but it's very similar. So today I want to talk about why, MQLs don't close, the, marketing and sales responsibility. Who are you selling to? And then developing the leads and the opportunities. So let's talk about MQLs that don't close. When you hear 98% of them, you got to ask yourself, what the heck's going on? Why is it that 98% of the leads that are being funneled down to sales aren't closing? And, what's interesting about that is over half the salespeople in at least in the U.S. today, at least from what I've read, at least half of them won't make quota this year. Is that because half the salespeople in the world stink? No, I'd say there's a lot of factors, and I'd say probably close to 20% though. I would say that, that 20% need some help or need to get out of the business. The rest of them are really fighting a lot of windmills. They spend a lot of their time on admin stuff, on crazy stuff that it required up the food chain for whatever reason. Most of it's CYA, people covering their rear ends for what they need to do above them in management and VP and so on. They're not getting the proper training and support, and they're not taught how to develop and drive business. And what's interesting, when you lay business opportunities in their lap, leads, they're not getting closed. So if MQLs don't close and sales reps aren't getting to quota, we've got to discover what the root cause is to this. And I don't think that there's a simple answer to it, but I think there's a couple of things you can narrow in on, focus in on, and say, I can probably do better if I change a couple of things. And that's really what I want to focus on today. So what are marketing and sales responsibilities for this? Okay, I'd say that in the marketing world, your scoring's probably slightly off. Something's going on when you're scoring your leads and passing them along. So what happens? It's the same old story. Okay? I give you a lead, you don't close it. Your conclusion is the leads suck. And maybe that takes 4 or 5, 6 leads or 2, 3, I don't know. Whatever goes on in a sales rep's head. It could be the first lead where your leads suck. Then that's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Every time I get a lead, where does that go? That goes to the bottom of the priority pile because my boss is banging on me to do a bunch of stuff that wastes my time. That's why I'm not hitting quota. I've got real customers that I have to deal with that might want to buy some additional product and service from me. And I have real prospects that are true opportunities that want to close. So your little marketing lead sits at the bottom of my pile. See where I'm going with that? How do you think that's going to go? Not very well. You take 2 weeks or a week to get back to somebody who's expressed interest. Or you don't put that much effort into it because you already know what's going to happen. Ask yourself how that kind of thought process goes in any kind of relationship in your life. Well, I already knew what you were going to say. Right? Not good. Well, it's not good for leads. Okay? Who gets the leads? This is where sales falls down. Who gets the leads? They just distribute them equally? What's that handoff like? What's a handoff like? Like, who am I giving that lead to and what's the handoff like? Now, marketing and sales own the handoff. Okay, so if I'm giving an inbound lead to a field rep, that's probably not good. And how am I handing that off? Here's a lead. What kind of check marks do I have to make sure that it's being followed up on in a timely manner, that the messaging is on par? How much communication is going on between both marketing and sales? Probably very little. If you're not closing the leads, I'd say very little. That's fairly obvious because you're not closing them. Okay? And sales, when you get that, what are you doing with it? How fast are you responding? Okay, who are you selling to? So when you talk to marketing, it's ideal buyer. I can't remember. I was just listening to a podcast from Amy Porterfield. She calls the marketing calls them buyer persona, and Amy Porterfield calls it something else. And sales rep says ideal prospect or ideal buyer. Are we on the same page with that? Okay. Does the one that marketing have make sense with sales? Are we in agreement what the ideal buyer looks like? So marketing's basing a lot of it on the science of who comes to my website. Who downloads my stuff? Where are they from? Now, if they're smart, they're getting feedback from sales. This is what I see in the field. You can't always trust that, right? You get a sales rep that's talking to the wrong person all the time. That's a problem. So you need to talk to a lot of different people in the sales department and the sales leadership. Get a real good feel for who the ideal buyer or buyer persona or ideal prospect is and develop a good outline of what they look like. What works, what doesn't work, what they respond to, what they don't respond to. There's some science and there's some emotion tied to that. Do we agree on that? And oh, by the way, in most companies, there's more than one. So if you're just working off of one and you're messaging off of one and you have three, you got a problem on your hands. And how often do you communicate? The world changes at just a rapid pace, right? So I can go through, I was in high school before we got a television with a remote control. I'm not telling you how old I am. Okay, think about that. I remember going to my brother's friend's house, Mikey Gerber, in like 7th or 8th grade, and they had one with a remote, and you could jingle the keys and the channel would change. You'd jingle some keys and the channel would change. So why am I digressing into that? Because technology and people and processes and companies, they change. So if you're not communicating often and making sure that your buyer personas or ideal prospects aren't updated on an ongoing basis, you're losing. Marketing is just creating tons of data on who's coming to their website, who's looking at it and raising their hand. And sales is in the field dealing with these people all the time. Both of you should get together on a regular basis and talk about this all the time and make those adjustments and adjust the messaging. It makes sense, right? If you can automate this, you can put some cheat sheets in place for sales reps. Right kind of messaging, what you need to talk about, that's going to help. In sales, you need to role play that and practice it and talk about it and make sure that you're hitting it. You get something from marketing that says, this isn't even close to who I talked to. You got a problem. One of you are off, right? Maybe you're off. Maybe you're talking to the wrong person. Maybe marketing's talking to the wrong person. Get on the same page with that. Might be even some joint field rides. Understand who you're selling to and what kind of messaging works. So when you get a lead, it's a marketing qualified lead. It's somebody that fits that persona and you know how to have the conversation. All right, this next one, developing leads, is probably, I don't think it's controversial, but people are going to tell me all the reasons why they can't do it. Okay, when I'm talking about developing leads, when you get a marketing qualified lead and it needs to be developed, most companies hand it straight to the sales rep. There's no development whatsoever. Okay, and they're the last person you want to hand that to. Why? Because in the stack ranking of all the things that they need to do every day, believe it or not, and you might be pulling your hair out marketing, and managers might say that's crazy. They're not looking at this at the top of their list of things to do is to follow up on some lead they got from marketing that's never going to close. Right? Didn't we say that? 98% of them don't close or something to that effect. They know it. They've heard it from their fellow reps that have gotten them. They've seen it themselves one-on-one. So they're not going to put the effort into that. They're going to do as much as you make them do because they have to, because it's part of the game. But are they really, really developing that opportunity? So wake the heck up. You need something in the middle. I'm going to use all kinds of analogies here. Baseball, hockey, NHL, favorite sport, hockey. Okay? It's rare that a kid gets drafted at 18, goes into the NHL and becomes a superstar within a year, the first year. It's rare. They need development. They need nurturing. They need help to get to where they're going. You don't just throw them in. And teams that do that usually end up screwing the kid up. They haven't even fully developed physically yet. You're putting them out there. Not to mention mentally. Think about it. They're traveling the country, 2 countries, Canada and the U.S., and they can't drink. They can't even have a drink. They can't go out and have a beer. How? You're saying, what does that have to do with playing hockey? They're still have some things, some growing up to do, some maturity, physically and mentally it has to happen. That's why they don't do it. But you take a lead, a marketing qualified lead, and you throw it to a rep, that's the equivalent of taking a young rep, a young player, and dropping them into the major leagues and expecting them to perform. That lead's not going to perform because the sales reps aren't going to do anything with it. You need somebody dedicated. Their job, they're being gauged against how well they develop those opportunities. Sales is still integral in the discussion, still integral in the ideal profile and persona because they're doing the field stuff. But if you have somebody that's dedicated to taking that lead and turning it into something a sales rep can close, now you have something there. And I'm going to tell you who did that. There's a book out there. See, this is where I say things and then I regret saying them. I'm going to put the link to the book in the notes, in the show notes, because I'll look it up after this. But Salesforce, everybody's heard of Salesforce? That's how they built their company. Do you think leads that come in for Salesforce went straight to the field reps? Absolutely not. The men and women in the field are designed to drive business at a high level. They got a lot more on their plate than following up the very beginning of a lead. There's somebody in between, a development rep, that's job is to develop that lead and prepare it at some point for a meeting with those field reps. That's how you succeed in making MQLs much more valuable. You tighten up the scoring, make sure you're talking to the right people, your messaging is proper on both the website for the marketing side of it and when your reps are talking to them in the field, and you have somebody who's dedicated to developing those leads. You might say, well, I only get 2 a month. Yeah, well, you're starting. Maybe you're just starting with that. That's okay. They can do other things for you while they're developing these leads. They can go find business in the sort of social selling and the things that I talk about in my class. This is how you go prospect and find business. You put them in charge of that. You're responsible for developing opportunities to be handed off to the field reps. Great. This is your role. In addition to that, it's how to manage leads. And as the leads begin to ramp up, HubSpot can't keep up with the leads. They're 20,000 leads a day, something to that effect. They have a whole team dedicated to driving those leads to somebody who's going to take it to the next level. Whether that's one of their VARs, their resellers, or one of their field reps. This is what I'm talking about. Use your head. You can't give them these leads, have everything else that they're expected to do, and see them close it. Thank you for subscribing to Funnel, alignment-group.com/the funnel. As always, if you subscribe, you get a free coaching call. There'll be in the future some other goodies coming because we're really sort of changing how we do things, so this should be fun. Of course, you can find us on Facebook.com/alignment group, Twitter @JJohnR, and I'm on LinkedIn as well if you want to reach out and connect. I don't bite. Contact me, jshade@alignment-group.com, website alignmentgroup.com. I do answer questions when they come in to me. Sometimes I just try to schedule a call, and I know people kind of say, why does he want to get on the phone? Does he want to sell me something? No, because I'm a verbal person. I don't like to write. If I have to, I will. But I'm much better in person on the phone. I can ask a lot of questions. I can get to the core of what it is that you need help with. And I can talk to you about that. So don't feel like I'm trying to sell you something if I want to get on a call and talk. I just am much better at that. It's much faster for me than to sit down and spend the time it takes for me to write an email. Again, thank you for subscribing. As always, keep filling the funnel.